Year 1447. Milan is a city holding its breath. Filippo Maria Visconti, the last of his line, is dead. His passing leaves not an heir but a vacuum, a gaping wound in the heart of Lombardy. Power, once held in the grip of a single dynasty, has dissolved into the air. It lingers over the city's stone towers and narrow streets, a prize for anyone bold enough to seize it. The great families whisper in shadowed halls. The merchants count their florins and weigh their odds. The common folk pray for stability, but fear the chaos that always follows a ruler's demise. A city without a master is a corpse awaiting its scavengers. Beyond Milan's walls, the Italian peninsula is a chessboard of ambition. Venice, the serene republic, watches with a predator's patience. Florence, the cradle of art and banking, calculates its next move with cold precision. The papal states to the south stir, their temporal power a constant looming threat. And everywhere, circling these great city-states, are the armies. Not armies of patriotism or faith, but armies for hire. They are the instruments of Italian warfare. Companies of mercenaries, the infamous Condottieri, whose loyalty is bound not by blood or country, but by contract. Their blades are the sharpest, their resolve the hardest. These men are the masters of the battlefield. They are professionals in the art of violence, their lives a relentless cycle of campaigns, sieges, and skirmishes. They serve the highest bidder, their banners shifting with the winds of fortune. A condottiero's reputation is his currency, built upon victories and the fear he inspires. They are the engines of instability, the very force that keeps the peninsula in a perpetual state of conflict. They understand how to break down walls, how to scatter an enemy's cavalry, and how to impose a victor's peace upon the vanquished. They know how to win a war. Yet a profound and unspoken rule governs their existence, a ceiling of steel that none seem to break. The condottiero can deliver a city, but he cannot keep it. He can shatter a dynasty, but he cannot found one of his own. His power is immense, but it is temporary. It is the power of the sword, a tool to be wielded by a true ruler, a prince, a duke, a republic. He is the wolf at the door, but never the master of the house. He wins the battle, but always someone else claims the throne. This is the paradox of his profession. This is the mercenary's fate. The condottieri are a brotherhood of outsiders. They are born from lesser houses or from nothing at all. Their ascent is a testament to brutal meritocracy. A strong arm, a sharp mind, and a tolerance for bloodshed are the only requirements for entry. They live in a world of contracts, stipends, and condotti, the legal agreements that give them their name. These parchments are the source of their wealth and the measure of their worth. A contract defines the number of lances, the duration of service, and the price of their violence. It is a business transaction where war is the commodity and victory is the deliverable. This system ensures their power is always contingent. Their loyalty is rented, never owned. A prince who hires a mercenary captain knows that his rival can make a better offer tomorrow. This inherent transience makes them both indispensable and untrustworthy. To the established aristocracies of Italy, they are little more than glorified butchers, necessary evils in the ruthless game of statecraft. They may be showered with gold, but they are never invited to sit at the table of legitimate power. Among these men, one stands apart, not because his sword is any sharper or his soldiers any braver. He is different because he sees the cage that confines him. His name is Francesco Sforza. Son of a legendary condottiero, he inherited a name, an army, and an unparalleled understanding of warfare. He has spent his life on the march, his home, a command tent, his world defined by the next campaign. He has served popes and princes, fought for Florence and against Venice. He has seen firsthand how power is won on the battlefield, only to be signed away in a treaty by his employers. Sforza understands the mercenary's dilemma better than any man alive. He knows that force alone is a brittle foundation for rule. A throne taken by the sword can be lost by the sword. He sees the endless, bloody cycle for what it is, a game he is destined to lose no matter how many battles he wins. While other Condottieri chase the next contract, the next sack of gold, Sforza looks towards Milan. He sees not just a city in chaos, but an opportunity, an opening, a chance to break the unspoken rule, to transmute the raw, brutal power of a mercenary into something more, something permanent. Francesco Sforza, the master of warfare, knew the limits of his art. He had seen that the power won by the sword was as ephemeral as a battle standard, glorious for a moment before being torn down by the next victor. To secure a permanent legacy, to transform himself from a hired captain into a ruling prince, he needed a weapon that was not forged from steel. He needed a claim. He needed legitimacy. And in the complex tapestry of Italian politics, legitimacy was woven from threads of blood dynasty. It could not be conquered. It had to be acquired. Sforza's gaze, therefore, fell not upon a fortress to be besieged, but upon a prize far more valuable. Bianca Maria Visconti, the illegitimate but only child of his longtime employer, Filippo Maria Visconti, the Duke of Milan. The Duke was a man trapped by his own paranoia and the slow, inevitable decay of his lineage. He was without a legitimate male heir, a fact that haunted his reign and promised chaos upon his death. He ruled a state that was powerful yet fragile, its future resting on his own fading life. Sforza, his most formidable general, was both his greatest asset and his most terrifying threat. In this climate of mutual dependence and suspicion, Sforza made his move. He sought not more gold, not another title, but the hand of the Duke's daughter in marriage. This was no proposal of love, it was a move of breathtaking strategic audacity. A marriage to Bianca Maria was the key to Sforza's grand design. It would link his name, Sforza, a name built on merit and military might, to the ancient and revered name of Visconti. For Sforza, Bianca was not a woman, but a symbol. She was the living embodiment of the legitimacy he craved. Through her, he could hope to transform his status from that of a servant of the duchy to a potential heir. It was a gambit to turn his contractual relationship with Milan into a familial one, to pivot from being an outsider to an insider. The Duke, for his part, understood the implications perfectly. He dangled the promise of his daughter's hand like a lure, using it to keep his brilliant, dangerous general in his service. The engagement was a political tool, a promise made and withdrawn multiple times over more than a decade to suit the Duke's shifting needs. He offered her to Sforza to ensure his loyalty in a critical campaign, then hinted at other suitors when he felt Sforza was growing too powerful. This long, drawn-out negotiation was a silent war of wills, a chess match played not with soldiers, but with the future of a dynasty. Sforza, a man of infinite patience, played the game, understanding that the ultimate prize was worth the years of humiliation and uncertainty. The death of Duke Filippo Maria Visconti did not, as Sforza had hoped, lead to his immediate acclamation. The people of Milan, weary of ducal tyranny, seized the moment for themselves. They declared the duchy dissolved and established a republic, naming it after their patron saint, Ambrose. The Golden Ambrosian Republic was born from a collective desire for liberty, a dream of self-governance free from the grip of a single master. Sforza's carefully laid plans were suddenly thrown into disarray. He was now in a precarious position. His claim, derived from his Visconti wife, was to a ducal throne that no longer existed. Yet they were a government of citizens, not soldiers. Surrounded by hostile neighbors, most notably the expansionist Republic of Venice, the Milanese leaders soon realized they could not survive without a sword to defend them, and the sharpest sword in Italy belonged to Francesco Sforza. In a twist of fate, the very republic that stood in the way of his ambition was forced to hire him. They offered him a condotta. The prince-in-waiting was once again a mercenary captain. Sforza accepted the contract. It was a step backward, but a necessary one. He understood that a direct assault on the new republic would brand him as a tyrant, a destroyer of liberty, and alienate the very people he wished to rule. His strategy had to be more subtle. He would serve Milan, but he would do so in a way that made the city entirely dependent upon him. He became the Republic's protector, fighting its battles against the Venetians with his customary skill and efficiency. He won victories in the name of the Ambrosian Republic, all the while ensuring that the Republic's own military forces remained weak and ineffectual. He presented himself as the loyal servant, the shield of Milan, even as his own power grew and the Republic's authority waned. He was patient, allowing the internal fractures of the Republican government to deepen. The nobles quarreled, the merchants worried about the cost of endless war, and the common people began to starve as supply lines were cut. Sforza allowed the situation to deteriorate, knowing that the dream of liberty would eventually sour. He had isolated his employers completely. With his enemies neutralized and his army intact, he turned his attention to the city he had been hired to protect. He did not launch a bloody assault. Instead, he simply surrounded Milan and cut off its food supply. The siege was a testament to Sforza's cold and calculating patience. He knew that the city's will to resist was tied directly to its stomach. As the weeks turned into months, the situation inside Milan grew desperate. Starvation, a far more terrifying enemy than any army, stalked the city's streets. Finally, in February of 1450, the city broke. The starving populace, pushed beyond the limits of endurance, rose up against the Republican government. A mob stormed the palace. The leaders of the Ambrosian Republic were forced to flee for their lives. The people of Milan, in their desperation, turned to the one man who held the power to save them. They sent envoys to Francesco Sforza's camp. They did not offer a surrender. They offered him the city. They invited him to enter not as a conqueror who had defeated them, but as a duke who would rescue them. On the 25th of March, 1450, Francesco Sforza entered Milan. He did not ride in at the head of his army. He came in civilian clothes, on horseback, flanked by his captains, flanked by the city's elders. This was a calculated and powerful act of political theater. It was the critical moment where force stopped and rule began. He was not presenting himself as the mercenary who had starved them into submission, but as the legitimate heir and rightful duke, answering the call of his people. He understood that the first moments of his rule would define its character. His first orders were not to reward his soldiers. His first orders were not to punish his enemies. His first orders were to feed the city. He immediately arranged for wagon loads to come in, bread, grain, and had them distributed to the starving population. This was a simple, practical act, but its symbolic power was immense. It demonstrated the primary function of a good ruler, to provide for his subjects, to protect his subjects. He was earning his legitimacy not through his Visconti marriage, but through his actions as a sovereign. In the days that followed, Sforza displayed remarkable restraint. There were no purges of Republicans supporting families. There were no mass executions of political opponents. He exiled a few key leaders, but largely offered amnesty and reconciliation. He showed he was not a typical condottiero, not bent on plunder, not bent on revenge, but a statesman focused on stability and governance. He put away the tools of the condottiero and took up the instruments of the prince: justice, administration, patronage. The taking of Milan was not complete when his army entered. It was complete when he himself began to rule it. Having won Milan through a masterful display of patience and psychological warfare, Francesco Sforza faced a far greater challenge. He had to govern it. The city he inherited was a broken vessel, drained by famine, fractured by political infighting, and exhausted by years of uncertainty. The people of Milan, from the highest noble to the humblest artisan, craved predictability above all else. They needed to know that the laws were stable, that justice would be administered fairly, and that their property was secure. Sforza, the ultimate pragmatist, moved swiftly to create a system of governance that was efficient, centralized, and visible. He established a new council of trusted advisors, blending his own loyal men with experienced Milanese administrators. This was a deliberate strategy to ensure continuity, while also asserting his own control. He dedicated himself to overseeing the legal system, often hearing petitions from his subjects in person. This was not just for show. It was a way to project his authority directly into the lives of the people and to gather information unfiltered by layers of officialdom. In these early years, Sforza the ruler began to eclipse Sforza the soldier. His days were no longer spent planning campaigns, but were instead filled with the mundane, essential work of governing. He reviewed tax rolls, adjudicated disputes over land, and issued decrees concerning public health and infrastructure. He was methodically replacing the arbitrary and often paranoid style of his predecessor with a system that was rational and, for its time, remarkably transparent. He was building his authority not on the fear his army could inspire, but on the stability his government could provide. A state cannot run on goodwill alone. It requires money. Sforza knew that a stable government depended on a reliable stream of revenue. He undertook a comprehensive overhaul of the duchy's finances. He commissioned a new census. He ordered a detailed survey of property and wealth, a catasto. The goal was to replace the patchwork of arbitrary levies with a standardized system based on ability to pay. This fiscal discipline was the engine that powered his state-building project. Pay his officials, fund public works, maintain a powerful and loyal standing army without emergency measures. He professionalized the bureaucracy. Tax collectors, administrators became agents of the central state, not independent lords enriching themselves. By creating a direct financial link between government and populace, he weakened the old feudal nobility and strengthened his own. This focus on sound finance set him apart from the typical mercenary. The Condottiero's instinct was plunder and quick contracts. Sforza, now a sovereign, adopted the long-term view of a dynasty builder. He cultivated wealth instead of merely extracting it. The foundations of the Sforza throne were laid not just with stone, but with carefully managed gold. In the heart of Milan stood the Castello di Porta Giovia, the old fortress of the Visconti. To the people of the city, it was a symbol of tyranny. During the Ambrosian Republic, in a potent symbolic act, the citizens had enthusiastically demolished parts of it, tearing down the hated emblem of ducal power. When Francesco Sforza became duke, he was faced with a choice. He chose the fortress, but his intention was not to resurrect a symbol of fear. It was to transform it. He envisioned it as the magnificent seat of his new dynasty. He envisioned it as the central hub of his administration. The new castle would be the physical embodiment of the Sforza regime, strong, modern, sophisticated. The castle's design reflected its dual purpose. It retained powerful defensive walls. It retained towers. It was a message that the Sforza Duke could and would defend his city from any external threat. But within those walls he constructed elegant residential quarters, grand courtyards, spaces for his growing administration. The fortress that was once a tool to control Milan from within was being reborn as a palace to project Milan's power to the world. It was a home for his family, a workplace for his government, a worthy residence for a Renaissance prince. By transforming the most hated symbol of the old tyranny into the jewel of his new regime, Sforza performed a brilliant act of political alchemy. He appropriated the past and reshaped it in his own image. The Castello Sforzesco became a source of civic pride, a testament to Milan's wealth and the Duke's enlightened patronage. The castle was no longer just a place from which a ruler imposed his will upon the city. It was the very heart of the city itself, a symbol not of terror but of order, prosperity, permanence. The story of Francesco Sforza is more than the biography of one ambitious man. It is a lesson in the nature of power itself, a stark illustration of a timeless political rule. While his contemporaries saw power as a finite prize to be seized, Sforza understood it as a substance to be transformed. He was an alchemist of authority who knew that the raw, volatile element of force had to be transmuted into the stable, enduring gold of legitimacy. He grasped a fundamental truth. Force opens the door, but only legitimacy allows you to remain in the room. Violence can seize a throne, but it is a power that diminishes with every use. A rule maintained by the constant threat of violence is a rule that invites constant challenge. It creates not subjects, but enemies in waiting. Legitimacy, on the other hand, is the power that grows stronger over time. It is the willing consent of the governed, earned through justice, stability, and shared prosperity. Sforza's great pivot was his recognition of this. He used force to create an opportunity, a vacuum that only he could fill. But the moment he had the city, he put the sword away. He began the slow, methodical work of building legitimacy. He fed the hungry, reformed the taxes, protected commerce, built magnificent public works. He gave the people of Milan a government that worked. This is the ultimate rule of Sforza's rise. Violence is a key, but it cannot be the architecture. The power to take and the power to hold are two different things. One is an event, the other is a process. One is the art of the soldier, the other is the craft of the statesman. Francesco Sforza succeeded where all other Condottieri failed because he was one of the few men in history to master both. Look once more upon the city of Milan. The chaos of 1447 is a distant memory. The streets are safe, the markets are full, the workshops are busy, the city is prosperous and secure. The castle is no longer a symbol of terror but a beacon of civic pride and princely magnificence. This is the ultimate result of Francesco Sforza's life's work. The permanence he sought was not for himself, but for the state he had forged. He traded the fleeting triumphs of the battlefield for the enduring strength of institutions, a fair tax, a secure trade route, a just court, a strategic marriage. He is the exception that proves the rule, the mercenary who outgrew mercenary power. Countless others rose and fell, their deeds vanishing like footprints in the mud. They failed because they could not see beyond the next victory. They knew how to conquer. They did not know how to rule. Sforza escaped because he understood a throne must be more than captured plunder. Among their shadows, Francesco Sforza stands apart. He broke the mold. He did not merely win a war, he won the peace that followed. He began life as a professional of violence. He ended it as a master of permanence. He left behind not just a conquered city. He left a functioning state. He left a dynasty that would shape the destiny of Italy. Force gets you there, but legitimacy lets you stay.